The crowd had finally left. The stadium, once full of cheers and camera flashes, now stood in silence. The echo of tennis balls hitting the court was gone, replaced by the soft sound of shoes on concrete and distant voices packing up for the night. Serena Williams sat alone in the locker room, still wearing her match outfit. Her hair was tied back, sweat still clinging to her skin. She stared at the floor, holding her racket tightly in both hands. This wasn't just any match. This was the end of something huge. After more than 2 decades of playing at the top level, she had just walked off the court for the last time as a professional tennis player. It felt strange. She had won countless trophies, broken records, and made history. But now, it was over. There would be no more grand slams, no more practice drills at sunrise, no more fighting through pain just to finish a match. The noise in her head was louder than the quiet around her. Was it the right decision? Would she miss this life? What comes next? These thoughts circled in her mind like a storm. She took a deep breath and leaned back on the bench, trying to relax, but her heart was too full. Outside the locker room, people were still talking. Reporters, fans, even her team. It seemed like everyone wanted something. But in that moment, all she wanted was peace. She needed a few minutes to be alone, to take in what had just happened. On the wall beside her, a photo from an old match caught her eye. It showed a younger version of herself, full of energy and focus, eyes locked on the ball mid-swing. She remembered that day. It was one of her first major wins. She smiled a little, then quickly looked away. The memories were sweet, but also heavy. They reminded her of how far she had come and how hard the journey had been. Just then, her assistant stepped into the room. They were holding a phone, looking a little unsure. "Someone sent this for you," they said softly, placing the phone on the bench beside her. "I think you should watch it." Serena glanced at the screen, then back at the assistant. She wasn't in the mood for another message or another speech, but something in their tone made her pause. After a few seconds, she picked up the phone. The screen was already on, and a video was ready to play. She hesitated. Her finger hovered over the play button. She had no idea what was waiting for her in that video, but something told her it was important. Taking one more deep breath, she tapped the screen. And just like that, the quiet moment was about to be changed by a voice she never expected to hear. Serena sat still, the phone resting in her hands. The locker room felt unusually quiet, almost like the whole world had stopped for a moment. The only sound was the soft hum of the air conditioning above her. The last few hours of her career were still fresh in her mind. Her final match, the crowd, the roaring applause, the feeling of knowing it was all coming to an end. It was overwhelming. But now, as she stared at the phone in front of her, something else was about to break through the noise in her mind. Her assistant had left the room, sensing that Serena needed a moment alone. The door was barely cracked, but the sounds of the outside world crept in. Reporters talking to her team, the rustling of bags being packed, the clink of rackets being carefully placed back in their cases. But Serena was focused on the phone in her hands. She wasn't sure who had sent the video, but there was a curiosity growing inside her. She tapped the screen, and the video began to play. At first, the image was dark, but slowly, a face appeared. It was familiar. A smile started to form on Serena's face as she recognized the person on the screen. It was Michael Jordan, the basketball legend. Her heart skipped a beat. She had watched him dominate on the court for years, admired his work ethic and determination. He had been a role model, not just for athletes, but for anyone who believed in pushing the limits of what was possible. And now, here he was speaking to her, directly to her. "Hey Serena," Jordan began, his voice calm and steady. "I know what today means for you, and I just wanted to take a moment to say thank you. You've done more than just play tennis. You've inspired a generation. The way you've handled pressure, the way you've shown up every day, no matter the challenges. It's been incredible to watch." Serena felt a lump form in her throat. She wasn't used to hearing such words from someone like Michael Jordan. He wasn't just a great athlete, he was a symbol of excellence. Hearing him speak so kindly about her career, made her feel something she hadn't expected. The words hit harder than she imagined they would. "You've changed the game," Jordan continued, his voice filled with sincerity. And not just for tennis players, but for athletes everywhere. What you've done goes beyond sports. You've shown us all what it means to be truly great. Serena blinked, surprised by the emotion that suddenly welled up inside her. She had heard praise before, but this was different. This was coming from someone she had looked up to her whole life, someone who understood what it meant to be the best in the world. "Serena," he said, his voice softer now, "I just want you to know that you've inspired me too. I've seen your journey, and I have so much respect for what you've achieved. You've earned everything, and more. Thank you for being who you are." The video ended, leaving Serena sitting there, speechless. The words seemed to hang in the air, like they were still echoing in the room. She couldn't believe it. Michael Jordan had sent her a message. He had taken the time to acknowledge her, to thank her, to share his admiration. In that quiet moment, Serena realized how powerful his words were. It wasn't just a message. It was a reminder of the impact she had made, not just on the tennis world, but on the world as a whole. She took a deep breath, feeling the weight of his words settle in her heart. Serena sat there, the phone still in her hands, staring at the screen in disbelief. The words Michael Jordan had just spoken echoed in her mind, but it was his face that stayed with her the most. His warm smile, the way his eyes seemed to shine with sincerity, made the message feel even more personal. It wasn't just a quick, casual note. It was a moment, something she would remember forever. As the video ended, she sat still for several moments, unsure of what to do next. The room around her felt different, quieter somehow. The buzz of the outside world seemed far away. It was just her and the message, and for a few minutes, she allowed herself to let it sink in fully. She had grown up idolizing Michael Jordan. As a young girl, she watched his games, admiring his determination, his relentless drive to be the best. She wanted to be like him, to have that same fire, to make people believe in the impossible. To hear him speak to her like this, with such genuine respect, left her at a loss for words. Slowly, she set the phone down on the bench beside her. She stared at it for a few more seconds, as if the device itself could somehow bring the message back to life. She had received thousands of messages in her career, congratulations, compliments, and well wishes. But this one felt different. This one felt like something more, something that reached deep into her. In the distance, she could hear the sound of people moving around, preparing to leave the stadium. Her team would be waiting for her, but Serena couldn't seem to move. She sat there, still processing, trying to find the right words to respond. But in that moment, words seemed unnecessary. The message spoke for itself. Michael Jordan wasn't just a legend in basketball. He was a symbol of excellence, someone who had set the standard for what it meant to be the best. To hear him acknowledge her, to hear him speak with such admiration, was something Serena had never expected. She had always known the importance of hard work and dedication, but to be recognized by someone like Jordan made everything feel even more meaningful. For years, Serena had been focused on the game, focused on her training, her matches, her wins and losses. But now, sitting in that quiet locker room, she felt the weight of everything she had achieved. The road had been long and difficult, filled with challenges both on and off the court, but she had made it. And now, someone she admired more than almost anyone else was telling her that her journey had mattered. Her mind drifted back to the beginning. The hours spent training, the early mornings, the sacrifices she had made. It had all led to this moment. A career that had started with a dream was now ending with a message from one of the greatest athletes in history. Serena smiled to herself, a mix of emotions running through her. She wasn't sure what the future held, but one thing was certain: she had left her mark. And now, as the quiet of the locker room enveloped her once more, she could feel that her story, her journey, was far from over. Serena remained seated, still holding the phone in her hands. The room felt quieter now, as if the entire world had stepped back and left her to absorb the weight of Michael Jordan's words. She couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted in her, something deep. His message wasn't just a compliment or a simple thank you. It felt like a recognition of everything she had worked for, all the sacrifices, all the struggles that no one saw. It felt like he truly understood what it took to reach the top, and that made his words hit harder than she expected. She had heard praise before, of course. Reporters, fans, other athletes. They all had something kind to say. But hearing it from someone like Michael Jordan, someone who had carved his own legendary path in sports, made it feel different. He wasn't just acknowledging her tennis career, he was acknowledging her strength, her resilience, her drive. It was as if he saw beyond the trophies and the headlines, straight to the heart of her journey. "You've changed the game," his voice had said. Serena had heard those words, but they didn't fully sink in at first. Changed the game. In a way, she had always known her impact. She had always known that she was more than just a tennis player. She had been a force, challenging the expectations placed on her as a woman of color in a sport that hadn't always embraced diversity. But hearing someone like Jordan, someone who had faced his own battles and defied the odds, say those words, well, it made everything feel real. For so many years, Serena had been focused on the grind, the next match, the next challenge. She never stopped to really think about what her legacy would be. There wasn't time for that when you were in the midst of competing at the highest level. Every moment was about the game, about winning, about pushing yourself further. But now, with Michael Jordan's message echoing in her mind, she allowed herself to pause and reflect. She thought about the young girls who had watched her play, the fans who had supported her, and the others who had been inspired by her story. Maybe, just maybe, she had done more than play tennis. Maybe she had truly changed something, changed the way people saw the sport, changed the way they saw themselves. The more she thought about it, the more she realized how important Jordan's words were. His respect, his admiration, were not just for the athlete she had been, but for the person she had become. Someone who fought through adversity, who kept going even when it seemed impossible, who had always given her best, no matter what the odds were. Serena wiped away a tear that had silently fallen. It wasn't from sadness, but from something else. A mixture of pride, relief, and gratitude. She had given everything to the sport, and in that moment, she finally allowed herself to believe that it had all been worth it. It wasn't just about the victories, but about the impact she had made. And that, she realized, was the true measure of her success. Serena sat quietly for a moment, absorbing Michael Jordan's words. The tears that had started to form in her eyes were no longer held back. They fell freely now, one by one. She had tried to hold them in, tried to keep her emotions in check, but the floodgates had opened. The strength she had always shown on the court, the power she had carried through her career, seemed to melt away in that single moment. It wasn't just the words that had gotten to her, it was the sheer weight of everything she had experienced, everything she had overcome, all of it rushing to the surface. She had always kept going, always pushed forward, never allowing herself to feel the full weight of her journey. But now, in the silence of the locker room, with Jordan's message playing in her mind, it all seemed to hit her at once. "You've inspired me too." Those words echoed in her thoughts long after the video had ended. Michael Jordan, the greatest basketball player the world had ever seen, had just said that she had inspired him. In a way, she had always known the impact of her work. She had always known that she was doing something bigger than herself. But to hear it from him, someone who had achieved legendary status in his own right, felt like a full-circle moment. It was a validation of everything she had done. Every match, every sacrifice, every challenge. She had truly made a difference. And that realization hit her harder than anything else. She thought about the moments when she had felt lost, the times when she had questioned whether it was all worth it. There had been times when the pressure had felt too heavy, when the weight of expectations had nearly crushed her. There had been losses, both on and off the court, that had shaken her to her core. But through it all, she had kept fighting, kept striving for greatness. Now, as she sat in the locker room, listening to Jordan's words, she understood that the fight had been worth it. All of it. The pain, the doubts, the struggles had led her to this point. It had shaped her into someone who had made a lasting impact on the world. Serena wiped her eyes, trying to compose herself. The flood of emotions wasn't something she could control, but she didn't mind it. For the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to feel everything. There was no need to hold it in. She had given so much of herself to the sport. Now, it was time to let herself feel the weight of everything she had accomplished. As the tears continued to fall, Serena realized that she didn't need validation from anyone else. She had already proved everything she needed to prove, not just to the world, but to herself. The journey wasn't over, but it had come full circle. Michael Jordan's message was the final piece, the reminder that she had done what she set out to do. She had inspired the world, and now she could finally feel proud of everything she had achieved. Serena sat still, her hands resting on her knees, her eyes lost in thought. The sound of the outside world faded as she reflected on everything that had brought her to this moment. Michael Jordan's message had shaken something deep within her. But now, in the quiet of the locker room, the memories started to flood in. Memories from the beginning of her journey, when she was just a young girl with a dream. She remembered the early days, practicing with Venus on the cracked courts of their neighborhood. The conditions had been far from perfect: rusted net posts, uneven surfaces, the sun beating down relentlessly. But none of that mattered. All that mattered was the game. The game was their escape, their passion. She could still see the determination in Venus's eyes as they pushed each other to be better. They were both hungry for success, each step bringing them closer to something bigger than they could imagine. Back then, Serena had no idea where this path would take her. She didn't know that one day she would stand at the top of the sport, winning titles and breaking records. All she knew was that every match, every practice, every hour spent training mattered. It was a lesson she carried with her throughout her career. There were no shortcuts, no easy days. Everything she achieved had been earned, day by day. As the memories continued to flood her mind, she thought about the first time she had faced real adversity. When she had first stepped onto the professional circuit, she had been underestimated, often overlooked. She remembered the doubt in people's eyes, the whispers about whether she could ever succeed. But that doubt had only fueled her fire. It had made her stronger, made her work even harder. With each victory, she had silenced those who thought she couldn't make it. It wasn't easy, but nothing worth achieving ever is. Her thoughts drifted to the tough moments, the injuries, the tough losses, the times when she had felt like giving up. There were days when the weight of the pressure had felt unbearable, the expectations, the long hours of training, the constant criticism. It was all part of the package. But in every challenge, Serena had found a way to keep going. There was always something inside her that refused to quit, a voice that kept telling her to push through the pain and keep fighting for the next win. Now, as she sat in the locker room, reflecting on those early days and the challenges that had shaped her, she realized how much she had grown. She wasn't the same young girl who had first picked up a racket. She had become someone who could inspire others, someone who had made a lasting impact on the sport and beyond. The journey had been long, and at times, it had been lonely, but it had been worth it. Serena took a deep breath, letting the memories settle in. She had done it. She had fought her way to the top, and now she could finally take a moment to appreciate the legacy she had built. There was still more to come. She knew that. But for now, she allowed herself to feel proud of everything she had accomplished. And she knew that Michael Jordan's words would stay with her, always reminding her that her journey had mattered, not just to her, but to the world. Serena stood up from the bench, feeling the coolness of the locker room air against her skin. She had spent what felt like an eternity lost in her thoughts, replaying her entire career in her mind. Now the room felt oddly still, as if time itself had slowed down, allowing her to truly take in the magnitude of everything she had accomplished. The walls, once filled with the sounds of victory and defeat, now felt like quiet witnesses to the journey she had been on. She looked at the mirror across the room, noticing how much had changed over the years. The younger version of herself, full of energy and hope, had given way to the experienced, wiser athlete standing before it. The face in the reflection was a mix of pride and exhaustion, a lifetime of emotions held within each wrinkle, each line. It was the face of someone who had given everything, and now the time had come to let go. The career she had worked so hard to build was at its end. It was surreal. She thought back to the very first day she picked up a racket, not knowing that it would lead her to a place of greatness. She had only wanted to play, to learn, to be the best. It hadn't been easy. There had been countless challenges, both on and off the court, but with each match, each tournament, she had learned and grown. And now, as she stood in this moment of quiet reflection, she could see how every piece of the puzzle had fit together. The message from Michael Jordan had only deepened her understanding of her impact. He had spoken about how she had changed the game, how she had inspired so many people. It was humbling. Serena had always known her role in the sport, but hearing it from someone she admired so much made her realize that her work had transcended the tennis court. She had given the world something that went beyond trophies and victories. She had shown people what it meant to fight, to never give up, no matter the odds. As she gathered her belongings, Serena couldn't help but think about the future. What would life look like now, without the constant pressure of the next match, the next tournament? She had always wondered what her life would be like after tennis. And now, that question was no longer a distant thought. It was her reality. It was an unsettling feeling, yet there was also a sense of excitement. For the first time, Serena realized she had the freedom to explore new paths, to try new things. Maybe it was time to focus on her family, to share the lessons she had learned with the younger generation, or even to venture into new projects that had nothing to do with tennis. The possibilities felt endless, and that was both thrilling and a little overwhelming. She smiled softly to herself, her heart full. The journey had been long, filled with both triumphs and setbacks, but in the end, it had been worth every moment. And as she walked out of the locker room for the final time, Serena knew one thing for sure. She had left everything on the court, and now it was time to see what came next. The sun was beginning to set as Serena stepped outside the stadium, the golden light casting long shadows on the pavement. It felt like the world was waiting for her, as if the air around her had shifted, ready to embrace whatever came next. Her footsteps echoed in the quiet, and for a brief moment, everything felt still, as if time had stopped just for her. It was a strange feeling, walking away from the sport that had defined so much of her life. Yet there was peace in the moment, peace in knowing that she had given it everything she had. As she walked toward her car, memories of her career flashed before her eyes. The crowds cheering, the grueling training sessions, the victories that brought tears of joy, and the losses that taught her even more. Every moment had played a part in shaping who she was now. She wasn't just the tennis player who had won titles. She was someone who had lived through the highs and lows, and who had grown stronger with each challenge. The journey had been long, but it had been hers, and she was proud of every step. But now, the time had come for something new. For the first time, Serena didn't feel the familiar pressure of the next match. There were no more training sessions scheduled, no more tournaments on the horizon. It was a strange kind of freedom, and as she drove home, she couldn't help but wonder what the future held. What would she do with all the time that had once been dedicated to tennis? What dreams would she pursue next? Serena thought about the younger generation, the girls who looked up to her. She had always believed in the power of sport to change lives, and now she realized that her journey didn't have to end on the court. There were still so many lessons to share, so many ways to give back. Whether it was through mentoring young athletes or using her platform to create positive change, Serena knew there were still ways to make a difference. Her story didn't stop with her final match. It was only just beginning. The drive felt longer than usual, but Serena didn't mind. She had time now to think, to reflect, to figure out what came next. As she turned into her driveway, she felt a sense of anticipation. It wasn't the same feeling she'd had before a big match, but it was just as strong. This was a new chapter, one she had never imagined, but one that felt full of possibilities. When she finally stepped inside her house, the familiar warmth of her home wrapped around her. The walls that had witnessed so many of her victories now felt different. They weren't just reminders of what she had done. They were symbols of what was still to come. Serena smiled to herself, knowing that whatever the next chapter held, she was ready for it. The journey might have changed, but it wasn't over. She had more to offer, more to give, and this new path was hers to discover. And that, she thought, was the greatest adventure of all.